Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone. I'm just going to give another wee minute here to make sure we have everyone logged on. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to Derry City and Strabane Strategy Growth Partnership meeting here on Friday, the 22nd of October 2021. This is actually now the 10th meeting to be held over the 4 years, and I'd like to welcome everyone and hope everyone has a great weekend. Just to remind members, I'd like to remind everyone it's going to be remote attendance, and this meeting will be broadcast live via the council YouTube channels and will be available for viewing by the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeating and viewing later times. The broadcast may be terminated under suspension under council's protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded to make sure their mics and cameras are off while speaking, and the meeting will use the chat facility and highlighting the request to speak. Participate in this meeting, you're requesting to be informed to the use of storage for those images broadcasted for training purposes and purpose of keeping historic records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the privacy notice is found on the council website. So members, moving swiftly on the agenda 2, and that's apologies.
Yes, Mayor, we have apologies from Teresa Malloy in the Trust and Seamus Ward is attending on Teresa's behalf. Paul Clancy from the Chamber of Commerce with Selena Horsey online today. Liz Loughran from the Department for Infrastructure. David Reid from DERA. Janice Skellen from the Department of Education. And Des Gertlin from Invest NI.
Thank you very much. There's no other apologies, members. Okay, members, moving on to declaration of interest, agenda 3. There's none. Okay, members, just before I go, I want to say my apologies today. I've quite a few other functions to attend today, so I'll be leaving early and I'll be passing on to Gavin. So members, the minutes of the meeting, 18th June meeting, matters arising. No matters arising from the meeting on the 18th of June. Okay, members, I'd like to pass on to Gavin now to take us through the deputations on agenda 5.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And members, I think it's quite appropriate. Following on from our last meeting that we had before the summer, the Northwest Regional College presented to colleagues on the work that they've carried out locally and the activities that they've been involved in, which was received very positively. I think it's now quite appropriate now that the university are now going to present to us today. I believe it's the first time I think the university have presented to the Strategic Growth Partnership, and it's very welcome. So I'm delighted to welcome Professor Paul Bartholomew, the Vice Chancellor, and he's joined by colleagues Professor Paul Seawright, Deputy Vice Chancellor, and Professor Liam Maguire, the Pro Vice Chancellor in charge of research, and Professor Malik O'Neill, who's a member of the Strategic Growth Partnership and an active, very active member, obviously, is also present. Also, I think it is appropriate just to mention that since we last met as well, I'm sure members join with me in congratulating the university on the opening of the medical school facility here. It's very welcome within the city, and I'm sure many members like myself have seen the impact of those medical students and lecturers that have come to the city buying houses and been actively involved in various clubs and societies throughout the town. And it's very much welcomed by everybody here in how we know as the university expands and grows, the impact that it will have on our city and region. And I know that council colleagues have worked very closely with university colleagues on the expansion case and also on the city deal as well. So I know an awful lot of work goes on behind the scenes with our colleagues from the university, and I'd like to now just pass over to Professor Bartholomew and his colleagues now to make our presentation for this morning. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks, Gavin, for that introduction. Quite a lot to talk about, with quite a lot of emphasis on the city deal as we go forwards, and some updating on where we are as a university in terms of developments at Magee. So next slide, please. So just to give a bit of an introduction to me, because I'm going to introduce the new senior team, which is actually part and parcel of the overall strategy for us to be the regional university of Northern Ireland, with those campuses as the vital parts in that university. Ulster University is my third university. I've been here quite a while now, coming up to 5 years. Joined as PVC Education and then became DVC Academic in September 2019, and then took on the interim role in March 2020. And then became substantive Vice Chancellor just over a year ago now. But prior to that, my first position, my first position in HE was in 2001, and I was in NHS prior to that. So by background, I'm a kind of diagnostic radiographer, which I think has some synergies with the health sciences move that we've got next year, and so forth. And indeed, as part and parcel of that, and have been involved in curriculum developments across health professions, including medicine, actually, when I was at Aston, looking at the development of the new medical school there. Next slide, please. as part of my kind of onboarding as the Vice Chancellor of Ulster University, we've built a new senior team, some of whom are here today. And in fact, Professor Paul Seawright, Deputy Vice Chancellor, was actually going to be conducting this presentation, but had another engagement. That other engagement has since closed. So Paul is joining us today, which is really good, but I'll continue with delivering this presentation. We've also appointed Pro Vice Chancellor for Academic Quality and Student Experience, a lady, Professor Adette Hutchinson. PVC Research, Professor Liam Maguire, already on the call here, because Liam also has responsibility for City Deals as part of that, because of the relationship between City Deals and research. And Liam will be well known to people in the city. Another person well known to people in the city is Professor Terry Scott. And Terry brings forward a new portfolio, really, which is Pro Vice Chancellor Academic Operations and Portfolio Development. And that portfolio development is a recognition of, you know, the regional nature of Ulster University and the job that we've got to do to enact regional balance, amongst other things. Appointed a new Chief Strategy and Finance Officer in Elaine Hartin. That replaces a previous role of Chief Finance Officer with Chief Strategy and Finance Officer, because it's absolutely critical that as we go forwards with the university's forthcoming strategy, that we join up our financial capability with strategic intent. And so that job has been absolutely constructed in such a way that the resources that we have should be made to work for us to deliver that strategy. We've also appointed a Chief People Officer, Damien McAllister. Damien was Director of People and Culture before that, but now takes wider responsibility, including the University Secretary, and so has oversight of that governance piece. And that's actually a deliberate thing that I brought in. I wanted to ensure that the university's governance as through to council was kind of, if you like, air gapped away from me. I think that's how good governance should work. And so the University Secretary, who supports council, reports through to the Chief People Officer rather than directly into me, which was the case under previous structures. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to talk about student numbers at Magee, and then as we go through the presentation, I'm going to make a case that, you know, it's not all about student numbers, and indeed the City Deals piece is not about student numbers. It's about other proxies for future economic activity. But let's just take a stock take of where we are with student numbers. In 2021, we had a total count of 4,498 students. That was 261 up previous year, and that was 930 up over the longer term compared to 2008-9. And although we absolutely have to accept that, you know, it wasn't a flat line between the two, over that same period, the total institutional growth was only 1,004. And look at the numbers that were here at Magee. Additional to that, we've had the Nursing Midwifery Council Competency Testing Centre, and we've seen thousands of students come through that. And although they're only here for a short period of time, there are lots of them, and of course they represent a considerable amount of additional economic activity in relation to that. So if we move forwards in time, next slide, please. And look where we are now in terms of the 2021-22 academic year. We don't have total year numbers yet for 21-22 because we have a thing called lates. We have a number of January starts and so forth, and so it's not actually until the end of this month where I get the first information about what the September-October starts have been in total, by the time some of those later starts for this semester, and then the whole year figure doesn't come through until after the January starts that we have. But nonetheless, we've got an additional 73 medical students. Gavin, you were kind enough to point out that medical school. There's something really special about it, and that is we were commissioned not just to run a medical school here in the Northwest, but to try to ensure that medical school met the needs of the Northwest. And we absolutely held out for a recruitment profile that was a really good match for the local needs. And of those 73 students, 70 are drawn from Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, 48 from Northern Ireland, 20 from the Republic of Ireland, and only 2 from over the water in GB, and 3 international students. So the commission's for 70, plus you can have up to 10% international students. But 68 out of 70 are locally drawn in a hope that they will stay and provide those clinical activities. We could have taken many more. We could have taken many more from over the water, but instead we ensured that our recruitment profile was going to do what we were commissioned to do. And I think that's been an absolutely fantastic result in terms of how that would deliver. We also have a new program with paramedic science. That's 40 this year. The demand for that program is enormous, over 600 applicants for paramedic science. I just had a text from the executive dean yesterday updating me on applications so far this year for next year in the medical school. We're over 500 applications for that too. So we've got a real buoyancy, and we continue to see growth in nursing as the commission numbers for Northern Ireland go up. In addition to that, you'll have seen some publicity around the mega degree apprenticeship with Invest NI and Mid-Ulster District Council, and we're bringing on other non-regulated programs, i.e. those that are not within the MASN cap, in the postgraduate program, in those MScs and smart manufacturing systems and international accounting with analytics. And there are links across with those master's programs that we're building and the intentionality that we have with our city deals in those sorts of areas. Next slide, please. In terms of the subject range, just a reminder of what we actually do at Derry at Magee at the moment. You'll see that we've got provision across all four of our faculties. I'm not going to list through those. You can read them just as well as I on the screen. But it is a comprehensive offering here at Magee. And as demand grows across these programs, we absolutely remain committed to creating more space as and when it's required to accommodate demand. Next slide, please. In terms of next year going forwards, we've got more growth still to come. We've got the health sciences move. Now, of course, that might feel a bit delayed to some people, but we took that decision only earlier in the year, but that was something that then had to be bolstered with accommodation rejuvenation here at Magee to accommodate those students. So we've been working on that, and they would join us at the beginning of the next academic year. We've got diagnostic radiography, radiotherapy, speech and language therapy, physiotherapy, podiatry, occupational therapy, and in addition, healthcare science, cardiology, healthcare science, respiratory and clinical physiology. And altogether, those programs will add on the current numbers about 850 students into that mix. More than that, though, it builds a locus of expertise and multidisciplinarity within the health sciences and medical area, and the interprofessional learning opportunities that come from the co-location of those disciplines is really important. And indeed, we're already seeing that with the paramedic practice and the nursing. And some of you who may have had tours will see that simulants, the simulation ambulance being in the space with the clinical skills developments for nursing, and all sorts of things around patient handover and so forth become really important. I think it is important too to point, and I'll do this at points throughout this presentation, that as Ulster University, we're a regional university. We absolutely do not see our campuses being in competition with one another. It's really important that they are that they complement one another. And there are lots of strands of research and practice that go between here and other campuses. And that medical piece that we see here that sits upon the diagnostics has implications for what we do in the therapeutic space with pharmacology at Coleraine, for example. And we've got lots of links between Derry and Belfast in relation to manufacturing prowess across those two areas. But it's really important for us that we are a regional university. We serve the region. We have campuses in those sub-regional localities. We are committed to all of them, but we are here for Northern Ireland generally. Next slide, please. In terms of future opportunities, the potential that we have, I think, for the growth and the profile that we're seeing in Magee, led primarily through the expansion in those health disciplines, but subsequently will be with the City Deal proposals going forwards. We have seen a real bolstering of interest in our provision from over the border. And as you'll see there, the application profiles from Republic of Ireland have really grown, and we've targeted that. And you'll see that of that 1,902 applications that we saw for September 2021, 962 were from Donegal and 711 were for Magee courses. Many of those were there for our health courses, and they're capped, not within the MASN cap, but with the contracted cap for the health professions that's linked to workforce planning. Next slide, please. So if we're thinking about where we're up to, I've always been really transparent and spoken about what I think is feasible within the operating environment that we're in. The steps that Ulster University has taken so far will lead us to about 6,000 students within the current operating environment. And I'm familiar, as many people here are, of the aspirations to grow student numbers beyond that. But actually, for me, that's an aspiration, and it would be straightforward for me to say I am committed to 10,000 students at Magee, and I can have that commitment for 10,000 students at Magee. But what I'm not prepared to do is to say something beyond what I see that there's a solution for. At the moment, there is a solution for 6,000 students. That is broadly achievable. That's not an aspiration or a hope. That is broadly achievable in terms of what we can do. And I think it's right and proper that I come forward and be transparent that within the current environment, that is what we can get to. Going beyond that requires a different operating environment, and it's full of nuance and technicalities. And I don't mean to try to hide that from anybody here, but it's going to take much longer than the 20 minutes to go through that. And you know, there are people on the call here where I've given the 2-hour conversation to go through the details about how the funding model works, how the allocations work, what the demographic numbers are on the island of Ireland, what the market share we get of Ulster, the relationship between the markets here, the markets in the south, the markets in England, Wales and Scotland, and the ramifications for that has, and what the demographic uplift is going to be between now and 28 and 29. Loads of details. And if people are interested in really getting into that details, it might be useful in the future for us to have some seminar, which I would be happy to chair, and to get into all those details. What I don't think is helpful going forwards is this continual dialogue that goes on where we just talk about 10,000 students and its hope and aspiration for that and not get into the detail. It's absolutely essential we get into the detail and understand how we can get beyond those 6,000. And it's just not good enough to accept, you know, sound bites from people to say, we want and need 10,000 students, and as if it's a light switch that can be switched on. And I'm perfectly happy, willing, and would welcome having a seminar with other stakeholders where you know, I can go through the details of that, which is not appropriate within a 20-minute presentation here. I'll talk about some of the stuff, but there's just so much more detail to share. So let's go on to the next slide, and we'll just recap on some of the stuff that I've said before. There is a maximum student number cap. And there's a reason for that that's related to how much money there is for HEE funding. There is definitely a funding gap that would need to be filled should we increase student numbers at all, anywhere within Northern Ireland, not just in Derry, but for Northern Ireland to have more students requires a different funding model. There are also risks to just lifting the cap, as we saw a couple of years ago at the beginning of the pandemic. We saw that when A-level results went up, that changed the nature of the offers that people held, and we saw a good deal of flight in a particular geographical direction, where that geographical direction was towards Belfast. There has to be a realistic conversation about when people talk about students as if we can move them around, as if they're pawns on our chessboard. That's wrong. They are autonomous people who will go where they want to. Yes, there are some mechanisms to manage student places, but you can't simply buy students or say where they're going to go, and we don't operate in a vacuum. If we don't get this right and do things in the right sequence, it's not the case that we work in a closed system. We see thousands of students, about a third of the total NI cohort, go over the water to GB, and 2/3 do not go back. And we have to think about that, and we have little control in terms of where students will wish to go. Students are not ours to move around at will. We have to persuade them and create offers that they wish to engage with, and I'm absolutely committed to doing that here. And it's important that you know that. Mazen isn't the whole story. Even if the Mazen cap came off and we were able to manage the risks of geographical distribution of that existing Mazen, there are still population limitations on the island of Ireland in terms of the number of human beings that will be coming into that sector. And that in and of itself will introduce an overall limit. If we were to capture the market share that we traditionally get within the demographic uplift that we would see between now and 2028, that would see the Magee campus potentially getting up to about 7,000 students. To go beyond that within the existing number of human beings, we would have to attract them from other places. And the next slide will cover on stuff on that. So next slide, please. So how can we go beyond those numbers? Well, there are those 4,000 students that go over the water, over and above the demographic uplift that we will be seeing here in Northern Ireland. We need to understand why they go there. How do we keep them? And that proposition about keeping people in Northern Ireland is not just one for the universities, it's one for society at large. And we have our role to play in that, as do others. Of course, we're a university that sits within a market in Northern Ireland and on the island and wider across across UK and indeed the world. But there is a potential to be able to gain student share from other universities and campuses, and the proposition of this campus and bolstering that, as I think we continue to do and will continue to do, will absolutely help there. We can grow in the non-regulated space in terms of international and postgraduate, and I think that the City Deal proposition is absolutely fundamental to having a world-class research offering, which drives demand for graduates and for postgraduates, and that will help us grow that provision. But it's not the case that student numbers in and of themselves is some form of magic bullet. And indeed, I think there is some sophistication in the understanding that the student numbers are a proxy for economic activity. It's not just about the students themselves, it's what they symbolize, the demand that they bring, the skills that they bring, the capability to the region. And I get that. But it's not the only proxy. And in terms of what we're going to talk about next, but as I hand over to Liam, is that the city deals coming in, that's a strong vehicle to foster innovation and attract quality students and staff from further afield as a consequence. But its primary driver is to support industry, to support innovation, to support effectiveness, efficiency, productivity, and to grow commerce in those areas. As a product of commerce being bolstered, the capability of local firms and through those city deals and the research that we would conduct with them, the demand for skills here will grow. And with that demand begins to give us the options to go beyond those numbers that I've said as the attractability of this place to people who want to come and study, yes, but live, work, innovate, multiply the economy is also really important. The other thing that's really important about city deals, and we work with the councils hand in glove in relation to this, is how there are other propositions, not just the innovation propositions, but the infrastructure ones and the tourism ones, and what will happen down on the riverfront here, and how that will transform the ambience of the place, the attractiveness of the place, and how together we are investing in place building. And I think that will help greatly to drive those people into this area and be able to bolster the opportunities there are for their lives, as well as what we will be putting in terms of those additional activities in the economic space as driven through city deals. And on the back of those, we may well see student demand coming in, which we can capitalise. And we're already trying to get ahead of that with those MSCs that we spoke to, which are aligned with those subject areas. So to tell you a bit more about those subject areas that underline the city deals, and I'm reinforcing no direct link between city deals and student numbers. Indirect link, absolutely, as the capability grows there and the demand for graduates and postgraduates grows, that will have an impact. But the city deals in and of themselves do not deliver additional student numbers. Implicitly, later on in the cycle, they will, for the reasons that I've said. And I just want Liam now to tell you a bit more detail around those city deal proposals. Over to you, Liam, and he'll hand back to me in a bit.
Next slide, please. So good morning, everyone, and thanks, Paul, for that. I just remind everyone about the city deal, and I'm sure we're all aware it's the largest single investment in the Derry City region, and it's been achieved by that successful partnership, as Paul alluded to, with the trust, with the council, with the university and North West Regional College, local industry, over many years of joint working and strategic developments in the city and in the university. And the city deal funding is in many ways unlocked by the innovation projects, and the university is leading in 3 of those areas, which, as Paul alluded to, I'm just going to give an overview for. And the 4th project relates to the School of Medicine, which I think is an exciting development for the Fermagee campus, and I'll talk a bit about that as well. The funding will provide that infrastructure for these centres, and then the university will then commit to secure and maintain support for these innovation projects to the benefit of the region. And many developed countries are trying now to boost their economies post-COVID through such innovation, and it's recognised that this approach to developing is needed. That innovation approach is needed to maintain jobs and develop new jobs for the future. And we're witnessed a real new technological revolution, and we need to be part of this as a region, and hopefully the City Deal projects will allow us to do that. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So first one is the CARD project, and that's probably the one that's closest to my heart, if I can say that, in terms of in my new role here. But that again, it's built on that research excellence that we have at the university and the doorstep here in the region. So it came out of, I was one of the academics who set up the SRC with the Intelligence Systems Centre, which I'm sure some of you have been toured around some 20 years ago. We set up that, and it's just going from strength to strength, and it's been a huge contributor to the local companies, and is now recognised not just as a leading research area in Northern Ireland, but across the UK. And the new director of the research centre, Professor Damien Coyle, which sure some of you have already met. So he's one of the only Turing Fellows in Ireland, and that's just recognising the quality of the AI research that goes on in our McGee campus in the university. So a few years ago, we refocused one of the research strengths of the SRC into what we call cognitive analytics, and that's what CARD stands for. It's the Cognitive Analytics Research Laboratory. And cognitive analytics essentially combines AI and data analytics, and it's a hugely exciting future technology, and it's got application across a range of areas of particular relevance to the region in terms of fintech, in terms of health, and new areas that we want to get involved in terms of media and renewables. And the aim of this City Deal project is to create that physical building where companies can work in close collaboration with our researchers. And we have a strong commercial focus, and this has already led to a number of successful spin-out companies, such as the award-winning wearable neurotechnology company Euroconcise. But there's also strong links. Carl is also a strong links, and will underpin the other two innovation projects and the City Deal project as well. So we could move on to the next slide, please. So a second project is called CEDRA, which is the Centre for Industrial Digitalisation, Robotics and Automation. And like Carl, this also builds on the research of the SRC. And again, if you've been around the SRC, we host one of the best mobile robotics laboratories in Europe in terms of the research strengths there. So when we refocused into cognitive analytics, we also refocused our strengths in terms of SRC into this robotics and automation area, and that built on as we established mechanical engineering at the McGee campus about 10 years ago as well. So CEDRA really combines those two strengths in terms of what we have within the faculty on the campus. And the aim of this project is to improve automation, improves innovation, productivity, and competitiveness by providing that innovation factory for local and international industry. And it's all about moving to Industry 4.0. And the project aims to provide that specialist equipment to support R&D for new and existing enterprises. And that factory of the future will hopefully inspire a new generation of digitally skilled experts in manufacturing and automation. So it's really combining two quite highly skilled areas and trying to get that future proof for the area. The next slide, please. So the third innovation type project is what we call THRIVE, which is Transformation for Healthcare Research, Innovation and Value-Based Ecosystem. Much easier to say THRIVE. And this project comes from our world-leading expertise in personalised medicine. And again, that's well established across the UK in terms of the expertise on our McGee campus in terms of personalised medicine. And that's done in continued partnership with the Western Trust and the City Council as well, through CITRIC, and that really innovative facility at our Altagavin Hospital, which aims to develop innovative solutions for healthcare by co-locating academics and researchers with clinicians. So the facility has also been accompanied by the development of new courses, such as our undergraduate degree in personalised medicine, which is one of its only kind in the island of Ireland. And we're seeing how such courses now can attract medtech type companies to the area to avail of these type of skilled graduates. So the City Deal project in THRIVE will see us expand the CITRIC facility at Altagavin, and we'll also develop a healthcare research institute on our McGee campus, building into some of the developments that Paul mentioned earlier. And there are also initiatives to build an outreach facility in Strabane and to engage in the wider region through mobile and community focused based data initiatives as well. Okay, next slide, please. So Paul has already mentioned the introduction of the medical students and the introduction of that degree or first intake of students, and this is well recognised and we'll acknowledge the important developments of this for the university and the region, and particularly to address that ongoing medical workforce shortage in the West and help future-proof our health service throughout Northern Ireland. So we've invested considerably on campus to accommodate the first intake of our students, but as the number grow and we increase our intakes, we need to invest in further facilities to accommodate these additional students. And that's what the City Deal project in around the graduate entry medical school will be, to help us to get that infrastructure development for the future for the university to accommodate those increase in student numbers. Okay, could we move on to the next slide, please? So just in summary, so when the heads of term, that was exciting development a few months ago when we launched that, we signed the heads of terms, there was noting at the time that the City Deal for Derry has the potential to bring 7,000 new jobs to this region, which would be fantastic, and it shows the benefit in terms of that investment in innovation. And the university, in partnership with all the stakeholders, will contribute to the skills development. And we hope that the world-leading research on your doorstep will ensure we inform our teaching to ensure we equip our graduates with the right skills for the future. And we always talk about the importance of this triple helix of the like the university sector working with local government and working with industry to create the right environment for such growth. And like, I visited many other regions in the world who would love to have that sort of partnership and connections that we have here in the city. And we're really seeing the success of this partnership to the announcement of other huge announcements for the city and research. So one of the more recent announcements was the Smart Nano Strengthened Places project. And that's the largest single Strengthened Places project in the UK. And that's been led by Seagate, and we're in partnership with them in terms of our AI capability. It's also involved Queen's and Digital Capital and other industrial partners throughout Northern Ireland. And such huge projects as this can also drive development in our courses, as we mentioned earlier on, but can also attract more people to this region and use that innovation approach to equip them with the skills to help improve the local economy, as Paul mentioned earlier. I think I'm going to pass back to Paul now on the next slide, conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Liam. So thanks very much. The other thing we want to talk about is the Shared Island Initiative, and we are involved in that and working in partnership with a cross-border tertiary cluster. And we're doing quite a lot of work with LYIT and others. And we conceive the Northwest here in terms of, it's really important that we engage with this agenda and think in terms of the Northwest and not just in terms of Derry as a city and Derry and Strabane as a district. All of those things that we've said that we're doing within those city deal propositions have a resonance that goes beyond the very immediate area, and we are working with those other entities to try to extend the reach of our excellence and innovation and draw upon their own strengths to be able to put together some infrastructure. And we are talking with governments north and south in relation to getting traction on that, and I think we're being really well received. We're not at that point of making announcements yet, but we are very much at the point of having quite a lot of work being done. Next slide, please. The other thing to talk about is, of course, as a university within the city, it's not just about our commitments to the curriculum. It's and you know, our own courses. It's curriculum it's a commitment to the wider community, and we continue to engage in partnerships across the community. We are chief sponsors of the Unesco Learning City Initiative, and that continues through our school engagement team. We're supporting, I think, 14 post-primary schools in the Foyle learning community, and last week we hosted John Shields from the Manchester United Foundation to mark, I think, 3 years since we've been working with the Manchester United Foundation, and we're the only centre of its nature outside of Manchester, and I think that says a lot. We've been working with the Hume Foundation, and we've got a chair in peace and reconciliation. We also had the American Conference of Irish Studies. That would have been a face-to-face conference, but of course COVID got in the way, but we still had a successful online conference in relation to that. The other thing to talk about is we have moved from a position of previously having provosts per campus. Under my tenure, we've deliberately stood down the provosts, for the main reason that I think in terms of when we're representing the university, it's really important that the senior executive like me, and it's why you've got me today and you've got Paul Seawright, we're the ones who put ourselves forward to come and talk to stakeholders like you, and that we don't seek to do it too much through the proxy of a provost, and we wished to put ourselves into those places directly. And as I got to the point where we were building a new senior team, when there were enough of us to take on those responsibilities, previously the senior team was a bit smaller than that, but it isn't now, and we're able to take on those engagements like today directly. So that's what we're doing. But also to support that, we have appointed a director of regional engagement, and that's Professor Malachy O'Neill, who continues to engage in these partnerships and will continue to do so. So it's really important that we engage with our stakeholders, but I think it's particularly important that stakeholders, meet with the senior leadership of the university, and that's the rationale for that. I was a little bit worried at that time, standing down provost, that would be misunderstood as in some way stepping back from that engagement with civic society, when actually it's the opposite. It's putting ourselves directly into that space and having those. And I actually think that's going really well. It allows people like Liam to go on to City Deals meetings wherever they are, and when they were related to our campuses previously, it would have seen provosts going onto there who perhaps wouldn't have been as close to the actual initiatives that they were talking about. So very important that we are in that space to talk to stakeholders there. So next slide, please. Just wrapping up now, we've got a video to wrap up with, but just to give a sense of the economic contribution of Ulster University in this place, the economic impact of us being in Magee is about £262 million per year, and I think that's astonishing. I think in terms of the benefits that we should talk about, the benefit to cost ratio of Ulster University is simply astonishing. That sector average, it says there, it's actually a sector average for research intensive institutions, which tend to have more impact, even compared to research intensive institutions. So the Russell Group, in that sense, where they would have across the UK a 5.5 to 1 benefit to cost ratio. We at Ulster are 7.7 to 1. That's astonishingly valued, speaks to our efficiencies and the economies that we bring to bear in relation to that, and the impact that we have. We're really effective in terms of what we do, and I think we probably don't shout enough about it. So next slide, please. Just going to talk in terms of a new chapter, and that new chapter is kind of a marketing campaign we have. We will have a new strategy going forwards into 2022, which is that we're still working on. The tagline for that new strategy will be inclusive futures, and we're still working through that. And with that comes a number of recommitments onto our campuses as a regional university. And in terms of what that means I think to this city, we have and region, we have a short video which I hope will play on the next slide. So next slide and play, please. If it's not on us, oh, here we go. Good.
The Magee campus is a wonderful place to start your career in health. Did you know, for example, that the School of Nursing at the Magee campus is the #1 School of Nursing on the island of Ireland, is 6th in the UK and in the top 50 worldwide? The campus really is a hub for health science activity. In addition to its multi-award winning School of Nursing, it also hosts and operates a Nursing Midwifery Council Competence Testing Centre, one of only 3 in the UK. The UK's first and only undergraduate degree in personalised medicine is based right here at the Magee campus. A new chapter is unfolding, and from September 2021 onwards, the campus will be home to Northern Ireland's first undergraduate degree in paramedic science. And last but not least, Northern Ireland's first graduate entry medical school will welcome its first intake of students to campus this August. However, the plans and vision to further develop Magee into a rich and interdisciplinary health science learning environment doesn't stop there. From September 2022, undergraduate health science programs such as physiotherapy, podiatry, radiography, will all relocate to Magee from Ulster's Jordanstown campus, which is closing. Did you know that Ulster has the largest mass of personalised medicine researchers on the island of Ireland, with an excess of £28 million worth of live research projects and over 100 researchers and engaged clinicians? The Centre for Personalised Medicine is based in the Clinical Translational Research and Innovation Centre, also known as CTRIC, at Altnagelvin Hospital here in the city. CTRIC is a unique partnership between Ulster University, Derry City and Strabane District Council, and the Western Health and Social Care Trust. It connects patients directly to national and international research opportunities. The Cognitive Analytics Research Laboratory, also known as CARL, is based at the Magee campus and is a cutting-edge applied research centre that brings together data analytics and artificial intelligence expertise, key technologies for future innovation. This unique centre will align Ulster's research capability in computing and intelligent systems together with its personalised medicine and new School of Medicine, creating the opportunity to develop a distinct research capability which has global impact on healthcare. As a strategic partner in the Derry City and Strabane City deal, along with Derry City Council, the Western Health and Social Care Trust and others, researchers, students and lecturers at the Magee campus are excited for the next chapter and future ahead, because there are ambitious plans to develop centres of excellence around future-facing areas of health research, robotics, automation and artificial intelligence right here in the city centre. These centres will see Derry become a hotbed for innovation and indeed health innovation. The Magee campus is a great place to pursue a career in healthcare because you will train in a dynamic and multidisciplinary environment alongside paramedics, sports scientists, medical researchers, preparing you well for the future environment which you'll work within.
Thanks for that. And back to you, Chair, whether there's time for questions. We're at your disposal. Thanks.
Paul, thank you very much for that, and for Liam as well. A very informative and detailed presentation, including your restructuring and plans for the future. There's lots of very positive things and within that, particularly and around the opportunities that may come from the city deal. So obviously lots of things there to excite many of us. The challenge, I'm sure, probably will be in and around the 6,000, where you're very open and honest, Paul, around the numbers and the figures within that. But I'd now like to just open up to the floor for questions, and have Paul Gallagher is asked to come in with the first question.
Thank you, Gavin. Councillor Paul Gallagher from Strabane. I'd like to thank everyone for the presentations. But I have to say, I'm disappointed in Paul's first presentation. When we see, and we're looking at in around 4,500, and Paul, your ambition appears to be 6,000 students, and you're telling us how it's not all about students. Well, I believe it is, and a lot of people in the city and district believe it is, and I think that your approach, it seems very dismissive of the needs for the city and district that they've had for well over 60 years, and the fights we've had for economic and educational equalities. And what you're saying is it's not going to happen under your watch. You tell us it's not a competition, but when we look around in the city and district, and we look and we see how there was a lot of courses and a lot of students that were grabbed up by Belfast City, and they couldn't even cope with the numbers that were coming out of Jordanstown. And see, when we boil this down, Paul, what you're telling us, and what you appear to be telling us, is like Stormont policy under NDNA. You're telling us it's wrong. You're telling us it's false. And you're telling us it's not going to happen. That's what you're telling us, and that's why I'm very disappointed, because this is getting battered about. But you, as being head of this district, don't appear to have the ambition to reach what we have been promised. Thank you, Chair.
I'm quite happy to address those queries. Paul, of course, I understand those views. And what would you rather, me come forwards and just say, yes, 10,000 students, let's do it? Or would you prefer that I do my homework, I work out what can be done, be honest under the system that we have? And instead, I think of always, and I see this, I read the same things that you read, and what you've just said to me is not a surprise to me. But what I'm not going to do is just go along with a number of 10,000 students, which is an aspiration, and say, yep, that can be delivered, when I, hand on heart, not through a lack of commitment, but through a level of understanding about what the numbers are, I come back and try to ensure that the dialogue is one that is informed by the facts, not just an aspiration. Just the fact that it's in NDNA, 10,000 numbers, does not mean that that was a worked through number that was based in the facts of the number of human beings that are available. It's an aspirational number, and absolutely that number was plucked from an uninformed position. And I'll sit down with anybody and welcome them telling me how they got to 10,000 numbers by looking at the data that I'm looking at. Now, that's not a lost opportunity. It was an opportunity that was never there under the current system. I've come here today and said, look, there's a plan for 6,000. We've already put in place 6,000. If we want to go beyond that, there's this thing that is the Mazen cap. And the Mazen cap has some constraints, not just for Derry, but for the whole of Northern Ireland. If that were to come down, though, and it's but one barrier, the other barriers are the number of people that are here in this place and its adjacencies and what we might expect. But all of the stuff that we said around the city deals is about building a level of attractiveness to do that thing that was in my presentation that said to go beyond that, we would have to pull students from other places. That's not saying Ulster University is not prepared to be in that competition. But what I'm saying is, if we don't do anything in relation to the constraints that we currently have, those are the things. And for that to be continually laid back at Ulster's door as if it's us that's not doing it, when I'm being transparent, and I think by being transparent, pointing out the issues that there are within the system, it's a system that's underpinned by a lot of detail that I said I'll sit down with people and do. It's the way that the funding model works. It's the political position on such things as fees as part of that. It's an acknowledgement in terms of when the demographics are. And it's not about having a simple, if it was just as simple as let's all agree it's 10,000 students and move on, it won't change the facts. And I think that I'd do you all a disservice if I came forwards into an arena like this and said, yep, and I just did a big smile at you and say, you know, we can do 10,000, let's get on with it. We will build Magee just as much as Magee can be built. But we operate within an environment. And my numbers here are not meant to be an obstruction to that growth. That level of transparency and honesty is required for us to start talking about the system of higher education that we have in Northern Ireland. And let's then, from that position, work out where we can go and do the necessary. If I were to come and not reveal all this stuff and not say where we are, where would we be? We'd have an aspiration for 10,000 students, but we'd be no further forwards in trying to get to it. And I just have too much respect for the people here to come and say something. And if you think it's just about my levels of commitment that's holding this up, well, that's just wrong. And you know, if you want to meet me about that to test my commitment, let's do that, because I'm absolutely committed and passionate to this place and have been so. And the level of growth that we've seen since I've been here has been considerable, and we will continue to do our best. It's not about me. It mustn't be about me. It is about the system. It is about the funding model. It is about the things that we can do and must do, you know. But I'm for one, I'm not going to come before people here and just smile and give platitudes. I will come and I will be honest and I will work with people and tell it like it is. And I'm sorry if you're disappointed in that, and I understand that you're disappointed in that, but I'm not being disingenuous or obstructive in any way, I don't think. Well, I know I'm not, but I get alarmed when people think that somehow I'm the blocker here. Happy for your views and to meet you outside. It's too important to just kind of say in this meeting, you know, you say something, I say something, we move on. You know, happy to talk to you about that.
Yeah, if I just come back just with a couple of pointers. Just look, Paul, it's not about you personally, right? But we have lacked a willingness for 60 years, and we can't We can't lie under that lack of willingness that we've had for 60 years. And then when you say, that you're on target at 6,000 and the 10,000 is aspirational, we need to change that mindset. And to see the change in the mindset, then we have to challenge the political willingness or the lack of political willingness. We have to point out the discrimination and the inequalities. That's what we need to do. We can't lie under and say we're satisfied with 4,500, 5,000, working towards 6,000. We can't do that. And you see, if the courses are not supplied, the students can't go. They will go where the demand is and the courses are. And if the courses are there, the students will come.
No, that's I have to come back to you there, Paul, because it's simply not as simple as if we have courses here. Not all of our courses that we've got at McGee at the moment through those offerings are full. Where we duplicate offerings, they're not always full. Any course that gets to the top of its demand level at Derry, I can give a commitment to this arena here. We will always grow those courses if demand outstrips supply, other than in those commission courses in health where that's linked to work-based planning. If it's within our gift to grow a course that's full, we will grow it. If there's a course that is crying out for being delivered here, we will build it. And we've got Paul C right here, who I tasked with leading our academic planning. Paul and I have conversations about this all the time. We are always looking for those opportunities, and there isn't any barrier in relation to the courses. It's a different proposition to that, and it's not going to be tied off at this meeting, but it's not the case that build it and they will come is also too simplistic.
Can I just come back briefly on that, just to say that the VC mentioned about attractiveness? That's a huge part of this, and on results day this year, we had spaces on all courses across McGee. Still do. Well, we were open for students in law, accounting, computing, engineering, business, marketing. We did not reach our limit in any of those subjects, and we never have. So it's not about availability of courses, it's about the attractiveness of Derry, and we're doing everything to try and improve that.
Thank you, Paul. Roisin McLaughlin came in there with maybe a comment, just Professor Bartholomew, where she is suggesting maybe that offer that you had to go through with those numbers, maybe at some stage in the future, maybe having that seminar, it might be useful. It's obviously this is a very emotive thing for people in the Northwest. Many of us have spoken to many past vice chancellors, over the years on the aspiration and what could happen. Like this is a hugely complicated situation. It needs political approval. It really is an executive decision to, within our Mazen, but the removal of the Mazen may end up the kids just all want to go to Belfast. So look, it's very, very difficult. I think out of the presentation, from a personal point of view, I think, the positivity that we've seen around the medical school, the work that has taken place to get the medical school open this year, and, what we've seen with those 73 students that have been here, I think has been very, very positive. I think we look forward to the allied health professionals coming next year, and I think the over application, the amount of people that are applying for these courses shows that if these courses are in McGee, people will want to go and do those things, and I think that's positive as we move forward and we build. And as Liam went into the city deal areas, there's three hugely innovative, really, really exciting projects that, again, if these courses are only going to be in McGee and people want to do those courses, well then, Paul, you sort of saying that in the future, all you can see is 6,000 at the minute, but if all of those things align for us in the future, do you think, that eventually, it may go beyond your term? Do you think eventually at some stage in the future that McGee may grow to where possibly all our aspirations would want it to be?
Certainly, and that's why the caveat is in there, where it says on that slide, under the existing model, we get to 6,000. If we could manage the Mazen, we could get to 7,000, and that's 7,000. That represents a projection of what we would expect to get of the share of the growth of the uplift that we will see between now and 28, 29, with more young people coming out of schools and going into university. And it assumes that we'll see those existing patterns of people going to the universities that they currently go, south, over the water, here, and that's what we might see, with some overlay of some activities that we would put in. And that's why it says on that slide, to go beyond those numbers, we would have to pull students from Galway, from Dublin, from Belfast, perhaps even from ourselves. But we don't, the key thing, I think, in terms of what I said here, is that students are not pawns on the chessboard to move around. You can't control them. These are autonomous individuals who will go where they want. And some of them will choose to go over the water. Some of them will choose to go to Dublin. Some of them would choose to go to Galway. What we have to do is ensure that they would want to go to Derry, and that we would be able to do that together. And that's part of what I think that logic of the city deals is doing. We absolutely believe that the medical school and the health sciences continues to build that reputation. And the other thing we haven't signaled that through here, year on year on year, this campus has the highest levels of satisfaction in Northern Ireland, has one of the highest levels of satisfaction across the UK. Ulster University, through its provision, is in absolutely the top tier of student satisfaction. We were 23rd this year in the whole of the UK, out of nearly 200 universities, we're 23rd. We're in the top quartile of research. This isn't some kind of third-rate institution that's just, here. You've got one of the best institutions in the country, in your city, delivering programs that's just, and that has an absolute benefit that we seek to capitalize on. And I think the work that we're doing with the council to develop this city down onto the waterfront, that proposition can only help. But what I'm here to say, what are the constraints? What can we do now? And we've done a lot, and we're doing a lot in terms of that growth. But when we project forwards, I see some blocks in relation to that which relate to the system. I'm absolutely aware that we've got elections coming up next year, and there will be sound bites that will come out about what needs to be done, and those commitments will be somewhat superficial without the detailed discussion that's required. If I was sat here today and done in other meetings, when I was first in office, and I was on Radio Foil when I first said the 6,000 numbers, if I wasn't saying, no, there are issues here to get to 10,000, where would we be? Everybody would be happy clappy around 10,000 students as if that was just going to get done on its own. Here I am, perhaps being slightly disruptive, saying, actually, if we look at the numbers I'm seeing, and I know we can get to 6,000, if we were to get rid of these barriers, we can get to 7,000, but we're still not there. Someone needs to say this. And actually, I am on the same line as Paul Gallagher, when Paul said, actually, and Paul, when he came back, was saying we, and it is a we, it's all of you, it's all of us here at the university working together. We need to move forward, and we need to have those conversations. It doesn't help anybody for me to say, oh yes, I've got a clear route through to 10,000, because I haven't. That's not to say that the system is not capable of flexing to deliver more, but without intervention, it won't flex. And just saying, I'm committed to 10,000 students does not get us anywhere on its own.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Leo Murphy, did you want to come in? You're on mute, Leo.
I suppose being next door to the university isn't a bit I want to come to embroiled in, come from the further education sector. But look, the new modern thinking is tertiary, because at the end of the day, tertiary takes in both university, further education, and people leave school and whatever level their skills base are. And what I would say is there is a lot of vacancies in jobs at intermediate, higher level qualifications in level 4 and level 5, which my institution runs, and has a difficulty recruiting, because the baseline seems to be only level 6 qualifications exist. Sometimes when I see the hashtag 10,000 students, that's up to the individual put it. I'd love to see a hashtag talk about 1,000 extra apprentices in the city. We need to grow a sophisticated system. And I'm very conscious that I need to see people talk up the role of the further education sector in this city and region. You saw last month the presentation made. We have a large number of people far removed from skills in the city, whose first step into skills and into work will be through the further education sector as part of this tertiary sector. So that's a comment I want to make, Chair, that sometimes we will need, if we get into this debate, to get...
Lost Leo there for a minute. Leo, we lost you there for a minute.
Can you hear me, Chair? All right, you hear me just say one of the advantages, Chair, we have in this city is basically we have an education corridor along the Strand Road, and within, shall we say, a distance of 1 metric mile, a person can come into our institution, he cannot read and write, and within that metric mile can go out the other side with a PhD. That's a very strong resonance. We need to build a very cohesive tertiary sector in the city. So that's my ask. The debate, you know, the level of sophistication sometimes seems to go around the university, and I would ask all the parties concerned to look very positive in the role the further education sector plays in building the capacity of skills in this city for work and for economic well-being. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. John Kelpie, would like to come in?
Thank you, Gavin. And first of all, just like to thank Paul, Liam and Paul for coming onto the partnership this morning and for taking the time to go through what is a very, very complex issue. And obviously here in the city, as Chief Executive of the Council, working with all partners in this issue over many, many years, the emotion around this issue and the sense of disappointment in the past is something that's very, very difficult to get beyond. And I think Paul, you recognize that. It is the emotional debate, the sound bites that surround the progress, lack of progress, or any development around this issue is very, very challenging. So I do think the offer of a more detailed conversation around this would be very useful. To try to change mindsets and around this, because I'm certainly not hearing this morning, nor have I heard since you've become Vice Chancellor, any divergence of views between the aspirations of the city and the aspirations of the university. And I think it's important to say that. We have frequently heard a divergence of views between the aspirations of the city and the aspirations of the university, but not in recent times. And I very much welcome the clarity around focusing and being clinically focused, pardon the pun, because of the healthcare theme this morning, on what the actual problem is, what the blockage is, and how we fix it. And what I'm hearing is a joint resolution to try to fix it. But you can't fix something unless we precisely know what the problem is. And I think what you said, Paul, is we can't deal with the problem as complex as this if we don't afford it enough oxygen, enough time, and enough openness, and set aside the challenges and disappointments of the past with a new open mind as to how do we address these issues. And I would offer the proposition that we are where we are today with the opening of the medical school, with the transfer of allied health, with the Catalyst City Deal projects, because we have opened our minds, because we have been working in absolute partnership across the city and district politically, with all of the various institutions and with Ulster University working hand in glove. This cannot be down to Ulster on its own. It won't work if it's Ulster on its own. And we need to continue that partnership of working together and to clinically addressing the issues. The lifting of the Mazen cap is paramount, but as we've heard today, that's not sufficient on its own. A sub-regional lifting of the Mazen target would help greatly. But again, if it's simply even those two things in their own, it's not sufficient. We need to continue to make this city and district an attractive place for people to live in, to work in, to study in, to come to. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing through this partnership. Rachel will report later on the progress we're making on the Strategic Growth Partnership. All of these things together will deliver those 10,000 students. Actually, will hopefully deliver in the long term more than 10,000 students, because frankly, I think that target in the long term is much too small, albeit the challenges that exist in getting there. So I'm actually very excited about the next steps in this progress. I think the achievements we've made to date, we should collectively promote in the most positive way possible, and we should work together to clinically address the issues that face us. I think it's only in doing that that we will unlock this highly emotive, highly charged issue, and we put our shoulders to the wheel to fix it in the years ahead. Thank you.
John, thank you for that. I think very eloquently summed everything up there. And John, you're to be commended for the work that you've done as well in this field. Like, the hours that you have spent on this, working with previous vice chancellors to get, to where we are today. It's always going to be a motive. Look, but I'm taking the positives from what we've seen today. And Paul, look, we're, on behalf of the Strategic Growth Partners, I'd like to thank you and Paul and Liam for coming here today. It's the first time that Ulster has had 3 very senior members of staff to come and present. So that's welcome, and obviously Malik as well. The work that you do. Look, we continue the dialogue. I think if we can organise that session, I am one of the few people that has had that 2-hour session with Paul. It is very, very worthwhile, to listen to that, and the more people who can understand that, because how we fix the problem, if more of us understand it, that we can ask and challenging questions, hopefully we'll get there. And I think, the reality is, it's not a university of 10,000. We want to see a university of 15 to 20,000 in 20, 30 years time, and hopefully, the foundations that we've seen today and those various different opportunities that there will grow and build on, and will just transform this region, for all our children and our children's children in the future. So Paul, thank you for you and your team for coming along and giving up your time. This section we've probably run on longer than what we should have, but it was very, very worthwhile. And we continue to work along with you and your colleagues as we grow and build forward. So thank you for that. I'll now hand over to Rachel, who's going to take the next item on the agenda, an update on the Carnegie activity. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and co-chairs. The next item agenda item 6. I'm delighted to see we have Jennifer Wallace, the head of policy from Carnegie UK, coming to the partnership today to talk about the extremely valuable piece of work that we have done with ourselves, Lisburn Castlereagh and Armagh Banbridge Craigavon, and the Embedding Wellbeing in Northern Ireland project. Members, you'll know that we've done a significant amount of work with Carnegie over the past 3 years. Just as a quick reminder, we published a natural capital account linked to our green infrastructure plan. Carnegie also provided 3 once-in-a-career lifetime opportunities for delegates from the partnerships to travel to New York and to Scotland and Wales to learn about international approaches to wellbeing. We implemented the first ever Northern Irish first youth co-designed participatory budgeting pilot with support from Community Places. We designed and developed a community engagement strategy, and we've developed a number of co-production guides and good practice. And we've also implemented a shared leadership program. So we've done some fantastic work with Carnegie, and I'm delighted that Jennifer is here to talk about her learning of working with the 3 partnerships and how community planning and wellbeing can be improved in Northern Ireland in the future. So I'll hand over now to you, Jennifer.
Thank you for that introduction, Rachel. Thank you, Mayor and members, for the opportunity to come and speak to you today about the work that we've been doing over the past 3.5 years. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this work, and I had a really fantastic trip to Derry and Strabane early on in this project, and it's been one of the things that I found difficult over the pandemic, not being able to make it back to your lovely area to see what's happening in person. But I've had fantastic engagement with the team and fantastic engagement with wider representatives and participants across Northern Ireland. So what I want to do is speak, if it's okay, for just about 15 minutes and talk you through some of the work that we've done, key findings and recommendations, just so you can see the fruits of all of the work that you've been involved with over that 3.5 years. So sorry, if you can move forward a slide, thank you. Thank you. So just to sort of bring you up to speed with where we are at Carnegie, we've recently published a new strategy. We continue being committed to what we now describe as collective wellbeing, social, economic, environmental and democratic wellbeing. Now, of course, the first 3 of those you will recognise from community planning legislation as being very directly relevant to the work that you do. We've added democratic wellbeing, and that's actually something that came directly out of our work in Northern Ireland due to the importance of strong institutions and participation. And you will see that thread of participation and voice coming up through the work that you've been doing in Derry City and Strabane and also wider across the region. You move forward one slide. Thank you. So to locate this for you in our broader work as a endowed foundation, we've been very privileged to work for 8 years now in Northern Ireland on the wellbeing agenda. We started at regional level in 2013 and were involved in the development of the draft programme for government, the outcomes-based approach, and putting wellbeing at the heart of the work of the Assembly. Now, of course, once that work had concluded, we took a pause and we took a thought to see what else we could do in order to try to support the embedding of wellbeing in the region. And around that time, the Northern Ireland Assembly itself, as you all know, was suspended. So the brave decision, I think, of my trustees was to look to the place where there still was active, functioning, strong democracy at local level and work with partners locally to see if we could embed wellbeing through the work that you're all doing. That proved to be a very fortuitous decision as the Assembly stayed suspended for a number of years and indeed through most of the duration of this programme. Do we move forward again? This was a very significant investment for a small endowed foundation, so £350,000 invested. It's the single largest investment the Trust has made in my time with them, which is now over 10 years. And it was one that the trustees were pleased to make, given the effort and energy that the partners were willing to put into it. All of the authorities in their aligned community planning partnerships applied, and out of those we selected 3, of course, Derry City and Strabane being one of the successful ones. As Rachel said, one of the things we did very early on was take people out of Northern Ireland pre-pandemic to expose people to thinking and developments around the globe in terms of how to think about putting wellbeing into policy practice, so that we can really get the best quality out of the programme. And that helped those members think about how they wanted to design their own programme. Can you move forward? So the programme that was designed had a number of different components, but I think it's probably safe to say that there were 2 core elements to focus your attention on. The first one was what's described as co-production, which is really production of plans, services, activities with citizens and communities, and really building the community into community planning processes. And the second one, as Rachel said, was a really deep engagement on shared leadership, on the work that we have to do together in order to improve services locally. Now, the shared leadership and co-production were both significantly affected by the pandemic, and I have to pay tribute to all of the community planning officers for the work that they did over that period, in terms not only of their own emergency responses, but also in their willingness to continue with the programme in such difficult circumstances. So, of course, all the activities that we had planned to be in person became online, but with a small extension in the programme timetable, we were able to deliver everything that we wanted to deliver. We also, throughout the process of the programme, had engagement with the broader community planning officers network across the region, and with NILGA on data and evidence training for elected members, which came up as a significant ask from the programme too. So if we move one further forward. There we go. So I think there's some really strong outcomes from the work that was done in Derry City and Strabane. The natural capital account that Rachel mentioned has had really strong regional UK interest, and as people, particularly with COP26 coming up very close to where I am in Scotland, the commitment to trying to build in environmental concerns into everyday decision making is a significant step forward and of real interest to people. So congratulate you for that work and for carrying it forward. Again, these are things that came from the bottom up, from people in Derry City and Strabane who wanted to make that happen, rather than a top-down suggestion from Carnegie or from the advisory group. If you move forward again. The Youth Making It Happen participatory budgeting, now this was one that obviously significantly altered because of the pandemic, and the conversations around how to do participatory budgeting in a virtual environment obviously took a little bit of working through. But you can see from that photograph that in the end it was successful, that the entire programme delivered what it wanted for young people. And indeed, one of my favourite things is I have two boys who play basketball, and there's a basketball net just outside my window here. I'm always really pleased to see the picture there at the Bull Park. If you move forward. And again, there's two things that have come out both locally and more broadly from the direct work done in Derry City and Strabane. The engagement strategy really lent on international best practice, and that was work that Community Places supported. That is really critically important to be looking around to see what other organisations in other countries can do, and that is designed and based on the International Association of Public Participation guidelines, but localised and located in the specific needs of Derry City and Strabane. And then broadening from that, really delighted to see the energy and the enthusiasm that allowed the learning from that to be turned into a guide for the whole region, and indeed broadly for anybody involved in community planning around the UK, as there are parallel programmes around the UK on community planning. So some really strong outcomes. We move forward one slide. We have some general findings that I will share with you, and some very specific recommendations. So in terms of the general findings, of course, working across the COVID period, particularly that initial emergency phase, what we saw was the significant importance of having existing relationships that could be built on. So very simply being able to pick up the phone and know who you're speaking to, being able to shortcut communications by knowing exactly who you need to talk to within a different agency or a different department. And that's something that we think is incredibly important as we look at building out from the pandemic, or whatever your preferred phraseology is for that, that relationships really matter in times of emergency. The flip side to that is the very strong finding from our work that currently community planning partnerships don't have the funding or the legislative basis for success, underfunded and undervalued. And we're calling for more core funding to support, particularly to support governance and secretariat functions, because without those being fully resourced, all the work that we were doing on shared leadership and on engagement with communities is deprioritised. It's really important to try and ensure that that stays at the heart of the work that you do. We also found, and again, this will not necessarily be new to you, but the relationship between the centre and local needs to be reviewed. There needs to be engagement with community planning partnerships as a core part of their job, rather than off the side of people's desks. So much more that we can say about that, and we'll maybe come on to it in a few minutes. Next slide. So we have findings specifically on community and citizen engagement. The voluntary and community sector is an essential part, but it needs to have an equal seat at the table. Now, over the period of time that we were working with the community planning partnerships and then with the wider community in Northern Ireland, we did see that developing. What we think is critically important is that for the region, it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. It has to be a local solution. So in other places, you see a legislative solution to this issue, but that is not our finding in this region, and it really does have to be locally co-designed to meet the needs within every particular area. And again, that means time needs to be spent on those bespoke models. And again, people told us, repeatedly that sectoral involvement is critical, but it's not a substitute for directly engaging with citizens. So again, there needs to be time, space, energy for activities like participatory budgeting in order to take forward the idea of voice, choice, democracy in a local area. Again, we found huge appetite for that. It's an issue more about whether there is space, time and funding rather than an issue about commitment. Next slide. And then going back to those core messages about relationships, we really think that there needs to be more for people to come together across professional boundaries and areas, so that they can share their experiences on working together to build better for their areas and for the broader region. We believe that there needs to be significant development on joint funding. We need to find ways through the risk appetite for joint funding in order to be able to identify core activities and budgeting routes to support things that we know will improve wellbeing in the area. And we know that the golden thread between the programme for government and community plans is weak and one directional, which means that it's perceived as top down. That the draft programme for government is delivered to local areas, but local areas are not able themselves to influence what is in that, and that is an area ripe for development. Move forward. So these are recommendations which follow on very, very clearly from that, and I won't read them through all of them, but you will get the sense. We are certainly pushing hard on pooled budgets. There already is a legislative solution for pooled budgets, and it's just about getting that guidance under the Children's Services Cooperation Act out and getting it as ambitious as possible. And if you move forward again. And then there are a number of recommendations about space making, so public conversations and conversations between service providers. So that's the top and tail of that, but two specific legislative recommendations for Northern Ireland as a whole. The first one is that the duties that community planning partnerships are under to promote social, economic and environmental wellbeing should be replicated at the regional level. That should be a consistent ask so that there is that golden thread, and we're recommending a Wellbeing of Current and Future Generations Act that is consistent with language in Wales, and a current bill at the UK Parliament level as well. And we're also recommending an extension to the Children's Services Cooperation Act to have that duty of cooperation across all governments and public bodies, to be crystal clear that that is an expectation on all public services, and not something that can be pushed aside, given how critical it is to developing services for communities and for individuals that need. And we can come out of the slideshow there, I believe. Great, thank you. So my final comments, I just wanted to reflect back to you what a pleasure it's been working with the team in Derry City and Strabane. Rachel and Colm in particular have been very close to this work, and have been very supportive and flexible and great fun to work with. So I'd like to thank them and thank all of you for your commitment to the programme and to the development for our community planning as we go forward into the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was fantastic. And can I just say, it's been so good to have an independent and partial voice working with all the tiers of central and regional and local government, championing what we are doing here at a local level. I know yesterday you were at the partnership panel for Northern Ireland, which is a really particularly important forum for community planning, saying probably a lot what you've said to us today. So, you know, it's really nice that there's an independent voice. It's sort of saying, you know, that there needs to be more focus in certain areas to make sure that we can be as effective as we need to be. But from all of us here, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you the past 3 years. You provided energy, resource, enthusiasm. You were a catalyst for further conversations at the time when we were holed up in our houses through COVID. And, you know, I just can't imagine what it would have been like this past 3 years without having Carnegie's input. So eternally grateful. I hope that the close of this funding will not sever the end of the relationship. We'll continue, you know, talking and keeping in touch. But once again, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I ask if anybody else has any other questions before I move on to item 6 on the agenda? Okay, so thanks for that. And now I'll hand over to Pauline Campbell within DFC, your co-chair for item 7. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. So item 7 now, we're going to hear a presentation on the strategic growth plan along with a programme management update. I'm going to hand back to Rachel to deliver the presentation, and I think Colm as well is taking part. So thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Pauline. So thank you, co-chair members. So the purpose of this report is twofold, really, and it's from a programme management update. It's very important from us as practitioners in community planning. So we have two strands of today's update, and Colm and I are doing a double act. So I'm going to just take you through the review of the strategic growth plan and also some of the feedback that we received in terms of the consultation and engagement process, which is leading into the review. And Colm is going to take you through quite a lot of detail in terms of what we've been doing around the statement of progress and how we've been performing. Both of these agenda items are related to the legislation associated with community planning and our requirements. So all 11 community planning partnerships are currently at this point in time. So quite a lot of detail today, but we're trying to keep it brief because I understand you've been online for quite a long time. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Colm, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Partnership members will be aware that performance management updates are provided to the partnership on a biannual basis. Prior to today, the most recent one was in March of this year. So members, an updated key population indicator report is included as item 7, appendix 1 in your packs for consideration. It's quite a detailed report that provides data on each indicator in terms of how it compares to the 2017 baseline and where appropriate to the Northern Ireland average. So members, in terms of summary then of the 49 key population indicators that we use that are aligned to the plan, you'll see from the graphic here that 39 are currently showing a positive upward change from the baseline, with 17 showing a negative downward change. And so when we consider this against the wellbeing pillars, which the outcomes are aligned to, you'll note that the majority of indicators within each of the pillars are showing positive upwards change in comparison to the baseline. We've also produced a RAG status report that you'll be familiar with. We've presented this before on a number of occasions. The RAG status progress report provides updates in all 233 actions that are detailed within the plan, and it's available for viewing and download on the Grow Derry Strabane website or the hyperlink that's detailed within the report. But in summary and on screen, members, you'll see that as reported by action leads, 11% of actions are already recorded as complete within the plan, and the vast majority, at 76%, are on track to be delivered as planned, with a further 11% progressing at a slower rate than originally planned. So overall, members, when this is considered together with the 65% of the population indicators that are showing positive upward trend, we can report that we're currently making progress in 6 out of our 8 outcomes, which are detailed within the plan. So in terms of a statement of progress then, an adherence to the legislative requirement that Rachel referenced there, a high-level online dashboard has now been developed to display this monitoring information in a user-friendly and publicly accessible way. The dashboard is now live on the Grow Derry Strabane website, and it can be accessed through the How We're Making It Happen tab on the homepage. So the dashboard very much is similar to what we've presented here this morning. It's over 2 panels, which are interactive. So we've made it interactive through hyperlink. So, for example, if we wanted to look at some of the economic well-being indicator data, well, we can see from the summary slide here the indicators 10 positive change and 6 not. But if we click on it, it will then bring us through to the actual suite of population indicator data which we use to measure economy. I know it's hard to see on screen the actual detail here, but through the dashboard you can see it. And here we have information in relation to the current measure or the current value. We can look back on the baseline and where we have it, the Northern Ireland average value. Where the information is available, members, what we've done is we have provided hyperlink to the data source. So if we use the example of economy here and claimant count, if we were to click on claimant count, it would take us then to the actual data source, which in this instance would be the monthly claimant count, which is provided by NINUS through NISRA. Similarly, for anyone who wants to find out any more detailed information in relation to your actions, by clicking on our pie chart here will bring us through to the very detailed RAG status report on our 233 actions. Members, it would be our intention that we would update the dashboard on a biannual basis in line with our current program management regime. And so with that, that provides the overview of the performance monitoring and the statement of progress. So I know it's very brief for quite detailed information, but the full reports are available either appendices within your packs or hyperlinked within your packs and also on the Grow Derry Strabane website. I'll hand over now to Rachel, who's going to provide an update in relation to the review of the plan.
Okay, thank you, Colin. As members can see, quite a lot of information there, please feel free to take some time and go through the website and get an update on how we're performing. But broadly, we can see progress is good in given the concept of the fact that we've been through the pandemic, and also there's been a lot of unforeseen initiatives that have happened since the plan was launched in 2017. So it's fantastic to see that progress is still there and the plan is on track. So moving on then, I wish to speak now slightly on the review. So as you're aware, we have a legislative requirement to review the plan, to look at it now, to modernise it, to make it look more up to date. So we have a deadline of April 2022, and as you will remember, we discussed that we would agree, and we agreed that we would look at governance and partnership structures, looking at this partnership, looking at the outcome delivery partnerships, look at actions, how the actions are being delivered and whether they were still fit for purpose, and also look at how we were using data and how we were reporting on data, just reflecting on what Colin has just presented. So Colin and I have been doing quite a lot of detailed consultation over the past number of months. There's been about 200 face-to-face, albeit online, meetings, talking to different stakeholders regarding the community plan and how it was working out for them. And supplement to that sort of one-to-one discussion, we also have done 2 surveys, one which was really based on a qualitative, trying to seek more in-depth feedback on governance arrangements, what people thought of the actions and what people thought of the data. And then we moved to a more quantitative and more refined questionnaire through our online citizen space, where citizens could engage with us to talk about, what they felt, if the actions were still pertinent, was there any other actions that needed to be added to the plan, what their priorities were. So significant amount of data that we've collated over the past number of months, and we have bar charts and pie charts and things we could show you, but and just to be quick today, I suppose, conscious that people are online, we haven't provided those, but we can provide them after if you wish to see them. So moving on then, Colin, to the next slide. So listen, I'll not go through these in any detail. The feedback we've received is that, as Colin has said, with 233 actions, we have a very comprehensive strategic growth plan. Our plan is probably the most comprehensive plan in Northern Ireland at this point. And the feedback we received is that it is, quite wide ranging. And the suggestion was that we needed to prioritise some actions just to help. So that's the reason why we launched the Citizen Space survey, to sort of see what the priorities were. And we have data now to show what people think the priorities are. And I'm not touching every one of them, but the data is there if you wish to see them. But broadly would say is that it really reinforced the content of the plan. There was no real surprises. Everything that people wanted is there, and the priorities definitely were something that we all were working towards back in 2017. So that's a very good soundness test of the strategic growth plan. So we'll use that data moving forward as we move to edit the plan and review it. Moving on then, Colin, just. So broadly, I'm not touching this. This information is in the report in your packs. But just broadly, the governance and partnerships, quite a lot of discussion around the emerging partnerships that are coming to, in the policy landscape at this current point in time. We have the new labour market partnerships with education and skills. We have rural issues groups, the anti-poverty task group. We have the integrated care system that the health and social care sector are consulting on. We have youth participation boards. We also have all the city deal delivery structures. So, the whole implementation landscape has changed a bit since we wrote the plan. So that's obviously something that we need to take cognizance of to modernise the plan. Jennifer's already touched on resources. That came through as a strong theme as well in our consultation and engagement. In terms of actions, I've already said, there was a strong focus that we needed to prioritise. We needed to focus on actions that were highly collaborative and that provided additionality. That is, that they weren't they wouldn't sit nestle within one or other statutory partners' corporate plans. Also, along a lobby that we needed to modernise the plan in terms of an increased focus on older people. Also, the whole COVID pandemic context and the COVID recovery is new and it doesn't feature in the plan. There also now is a huge focus on green transformation in the policy landscape, and more so now than whenever we were developing the plan. So the whole issue of climate adaptation, the sustainable development goals, for example, need to be put in. Also, people have said that strategic rail needs to be more to the forefront in it as well too. So we'll take all that feedback which we've received and to make sure that that's properly reflected in the plan. In terms of data, just quickly, you'll know that we're strongly reliant on NISRA as a central repository for reliable and valid data for the development of the plan. And we'll always look to the emerging programme for government and those data sources to ensure alignment from the top down to bottom up. And Colin has touched on how we use the NISRA data sources as the main source of data for the community plan. So moving on then, Colin. So I hope so that's broad overview of the feedback that we've received. I can follow this up with data charts if you wish to see them. We have them here. But what we hope to do, based on any subject to any discussions today, we want to use this feedback and some of the data that Colin has reported on to go and do an editorial review of the strategic growth plan. We're going to do that now over the autumn and the winter. Our next partnership meeting is in February 2022, where we wish to present you with a revised, modernised draft strategic growth plan 4 years in, and then issue it for public consultation for 9 weeks. And that'll put us nicely into April 2022, which is the date which DFC have given us for what they deem as a formal review of the strategic growth plan. So with that, I'll close and say that the recommendations in front of you today, co-chairs, is that you endorse the contents of the draft progress update and indicator reports as presented by Colin for the first 4 years of this strategic growth plan and the good progress that's been made. And also that you endorse the consultation feedback received, and so that we can now move to edit the plan. Thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Colin, for that presentation. That's very useful, and it's great to see the positive progress that has been made to date. Maybe can I just ask, first of all, if there's any comments or questions that anybody wants to put forward at this stage? And just to remind everybody that there is the chat function there as well. Okay, so nothing coming through at the minute. So if we move then, as Rachel has outlined, just in terms of an endorsement and as outlined in the paper there as well, really, if we can get a proposer, first of all, please, to endorse the contents of the draft progress update and endorse the consultation feedback received to be considered as part of the review process.
Pauline, as co-chair, I see there that Roisin has posted a chat, and also Tricia from Libraries NI. So perhaps we could take that, Roisin and Tricia, if you're content, as a proposer and seconder.
Yeah, I was just about to say I'll propose.
That's great, Roisin.
And I'm
thank
happy
you.
to second. Yeah.
And Tricia's seconding. Okay, that is great. Thank you. And thanks for your comments as well. I see there's positive comments coming through there as well. So that's great. So thank you. Thanks, Rachel and Colin. Okay, so we're moving on quite quickly now towards the end, really, to the last few agenda items. So item 8 really is in relation to meeting schedule. So you'll see that up on the screen there. And I'll pass to Gavin maybe at this stage.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. Well, the meeting schedule is just for members' information. So there are the dates. February the 11th, as Rachel has already suggested, February 2022. Then the next meeting will be Friday the 17th of June 2022, and then October 21st, 2022. Not sure what format the meeting will take place in February. I know there's a willingness to maybe move towards a physical meeting if that's possible, but I'm sure council colleagues will review and see where we are and if that's possible. I know members, we've really all been through too many of these Zoom and WebEx meetings that it'd be good to get back in person again. So hopefully that meeting, depending on what the situation is after Christmas, could take place in some venue at some stage, but I'm sure we'll be advised of that closer to the time. So that's just for members' information. And the last item, and does anybody have any other business?
Gavin, it's just to come in just on foot of your last comment there, just to say, yeah, hopefully we will be able to do something physical. It's been far too long since we've all been able to collectively get together. And I think just picking up on some of the feedback also that Rachel just spoke about, there's always the challenge between the scale of the number of people that are on the partnership and then the inevitable formality of what a meeting looks like. So we'll try to see if we can get a venue that maybe enables us to meet in a sort of more informal way and have a more interactive discussion if we can for our sort of first return to physical meetings. So we'll do a bit of a look at that, and we'll pass information around probably immediately after Christmas with regard to what that might look like. And as you say, hopefully we're in a situation where that can happen.
Okay, thank you, John. Russian, do you have your hand up, or is that a legacy hand?
No, I have my hand up.
Yeah.
This is just a thought, and people might kill me for saying this, but sometimes we often run out of time, and we're having some really good discussions. And I'm just wondering, and I also am very aware there's a lot of work that goes into these meetings and the preparation and the paper that's sent out. Is there any merit in us maybe meeting a bit more often? There's quite a big gap between the meetings, and there always seems to be where we run out of time. And I don't know, it's just a thought. I know it means a lot of work, but I just think, maybe we should meet more often. I'm just putting that out there. But I do realise that a lot of work goes into it, and I realise that it takes people, a lot of time as well to actually attend the meetings. But maybe there's something in that. Anyway, just a suggestion.
Well, that's a good suggestion, Roisin. But why don't we look at that when we meet in February and see how we get on? If there may be merit in taking some subjects. I think, for example, the discussion this morning around the university sounds like we're probably getting into another kind of workshop scenario. So maybe we can take some topics and sectoral issues and meet around those.
Yeah, maybe something like that rather than a full meeting every.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of work. But yeah, maybe on a smaller scale, a meeting focusing on something in particular. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Okay, we'll bring that forward into February's meeting. I'll have some suggestions around it, maybe some discussion around it then.
Yeah, good. Karen, you wanted to come in there?
If you don't mind, Chair, and just
Not at all.
let the partnership know that following on from a notice of motion of council in relation to exploring the concept of rights of nature and what that would mean for the region and how we might be able to take forward policies and strategies that would support that concept. We are taking forward 2 workshops over the next couple of months in terms of engaging with stakeholders And really what we will do is we'll send that out to the partnership just so you're aware of when they are, and you're very welcome to take part for anyone in you or your organisation if you're able to. So just to let everybody know about that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Leo, did you have a comment?
Chair, just taking on Roisin's point, there's a number of kind of big things happening in the kind of broad NI strategy space around big government in terms of things like the 10X strategy, the skills strategy that will have an impact on sub-regions. So I don't know how we package updates on that from whoever needs to give us updates, and I know they're in the early stages, but certainly all I hear in conversations with government now is 10X is going to be the big driver in terms of building clusters and the rest. I don't know how we feed that into what we're doing. Just an idea that there's stuff happening in that space, plus the skilled strategy for 10X coming behind it. So that those are big pieces that will impact sub-regional planning. And I just don't know, Chair, if there's space through what John said there to have at least begin to tease them out, or to talk to the authors of those documents to see where we sit in that space.
Okay, thanks for that, Leo.
Again, Chair, that's another good suggestion. So we'll take that away and see if we can beef that up a little bit and see what we can do about it.
Okay, John, thanks for that. Anybody else got any other business? Everybody okay? Well, we'll draw the meeting to a close. Like just close by thanking everybody for your attendance today and your contribution. It's been a very informative and with a lot of very emotional conversations there about the university. And look, we're very grateful for them coming and talking to us today, and hopefully we'll continue in that vein and all work towards the growth and expansion of Magee in the future. Because I think we are all aligned on that same sheet. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much today, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, co-chairs.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair, and all. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.